I want to begin this speech with one point, and I'm going to make it when I end, so it might be a short speech. If you cannot insure a project, you probably can't borrow money from a bank. Now, if you're not listening to me, I'm going to say I'm going to raise your rates 300% down on the Gulf Coast, and insurance for health insurance is going up about 400%. I might get your attention. What I'm telling you is this: insurance may be the most important office that you have in state government. If you cannot insure a project, you probably can't finance it, and if you can't finance it, you have absolutely no economic growth. Just think about what I'm saying to you. You can't have jobs, you can't have anything unless you have the ability to have viable insurance programs within the state of Mississippi. Just no job creation if you don't have it. I want to thank each of you for your support, though, in the general election. And I thank you for what you've done in the past in the Republican primary. I want to talk very briefly about some of the issues that we face on the Gulf Coast. How many of you are actually listening to me about what I'm saying on the Gulf Coast? Okay, I'm glad to hear that. These are the Gulf Coast folks. We've made some progress on the Gulf Coast. We've got rates to level. We've got some pretty good people that have come in to write more insurance. We posted a bulletin at the Katrina event that showed that we have 5 companies writing insurance on the Gulf Coast that did not write pre-Katrina. And what that means is we spread competition on the Gulf Coast to where you have more people and more options when you try to find insurance on the Gulf Coast. And speaking of the Gulf Coast, we've expanded our office on the Gulf Coast. We've added another staff person who's an expert not only in insurance but in real estate and construction. And that's important for you to know about. We're adding someone who will teach fire education. And I'm going to talk about that briefly in just a minute. But when you reduce fire deaths in the state of Mississippi, you reduce the premiums that you pay on your homeowner's insurance. You're going to see a lot of changes in the next 6 months on how we rate what we call public protection classes, even in spite of the fact that the legislature did not fund 3 rounds of the rural fire truck program at the tune of $3 million a year. They took $9 million in the last year that should have gone to the rural fire truck program and spent it somewhere else. On the Gulf Coast, if you're ever going to lower rates to where they need to be, you've got to have a mitigation program. And that means you've got to build a stronger home. You've got to build higher, stronger and higher. Stay out of the floodplain, build a stronger home so you have a place to come back to after you have a catastrophic event. To do that, if you got an older home, you can't tear it down and rebuild. Normally what you want to do is to mitigate it. And that means you tie the roof down to the slab, if it's on a slab, or to the foundation to make sure the roof doesn't blow off. You protect the house. We call that protecting the envelope of the home. To do that, it takes money. We did a $29 million mitigation program several years ago, and we just completed it. And I am asking the wind pool, which receives a lot of tax dollars from surplus lines, to do a $5 million a year. Now listen to me. If you're not listening to anything, listen to this. A $5 million mitigation program that we can operate outside the red tape that we have to go through with government and operate through Habitat for Humanity or other nonprofits where we don't have a 30% overload. That will allow the consumer to get a payback on their investment over a 36-month period, which will lower insurance rates. When you mitigate a home, your rates for wind go down over 50%. And that's important if you live on the Gulf Coast. The Clarity Act was passed by the legislature this past session. We've got most of the data in from the Clarity Act. I will release most of that data for 10 years loss ratio, 10 years since 2004 through 2014, sometime around the 1st of December. There's going to be some eye-opening numbers in that report. When we release it, it's going to be hard for people to understand, but we think it's important that you know what's going on, not only on the Gulf Coast, but all the state of Mississippi. One of the things I'm most proud about is what we've done to help the consumers in this state. Since I've been your insurance commissioner, we've returned $22 million to the consumers in the last 7.5 years, in addition to $150 million that we recovered from the Franco case. Most of you may not know this, but as commissioner, you normally serve if you take over a company as a trustee. So we've returned that money back to the proper people. We recovered about 50 cents on the dollar out of that case. It was a $400 million fraud case, so we've done well there. I applaud the passage of the PACE Act. Now, the PACE Act is an act that said that states like Mississippi could choose how large their small groups would be. Back when the Affordable Care Act was passed, I took the position that the state should choose what size a small group would be. And if you did that, then the state controls the size of the small group, which we set at 50. The federal government has set them at 100. The PACE Act allowed the states to keep the groups at 50 instead of having to go to 100. Those states that did not make the choice that we made in Mississippi to keep control in our state are facing draconian rate increases because they let the federal government run their business. Let me give you a quick example. If you have a small group of 50 and under, and you don't comply to the ACA, you're fined $100 a day per employee, $36,500 for each employee you have through the Internal Revenue Service. And if you're drinking coffee back there and not listening to this, we're probably the ones going to pick your pocket when it's all over. You have a cap on how much money they can take from you on the Internal Revenue Service, but usually it's capped at $250,000 to $500,000. I don't know how many small businesses could stand that much money going out the door for what they do. The Mississippi legislature has been very supportive of all of our actions outside of the Rural Fire Truck Program, and I applaud them for what they've done to let us move this department forward to become a paperless entity, and in addition to that, to try to change the direction in which we're going with technology. I'm going to close with a final note since I'm close to my time being out and tell you one more time that if you cannot insure a project, you probably cannot finance it at the bank. If you do not have a viable insurance industry, you will not have a viable economic growth in the state of Mississippi. Now, I have not talked about some of the issues that we face on a daily basis like cybersecurity, where you have millions of records that are stolen. That's some of the issues that we're facing. I haven't talked about the National Flood Insurance Program, which will come back next year, and you're going to see rates go from $500 a year back up to $19,000 or $20,000. In case you didn't hear that, from $500 to $600 a year to $19,000 to $20,000, which we experienced on the Gulf Coast when I filed suit against FEMA and the federal government to try to get the rates rolled back, and we were successful. I don't know if we'll be able to do that again. So when you look at what's happening on the national level and the federal level, you need to be supportive of Senator Cochran and Wicker and our congressional delegation on what they've tried to do to bring some rhyme and reason into the National Flood Insurance Program. The problem with federal government is this simple. The federal government wants everyone to buy flood insurance from them and not let private industry sell flood insurance on the Gulf Coast. We have 5 private companies that sell flood insurance on the Gulf Coast at rates lower than the National Flood Program. The federal government doesn't like that. Why? Because if people are low risk and they buy from the private industry, it increases the high risk pool for the federal government, and they want more and more people to buy from them and not from private industry. That's some of the issues that we face today. And I didn't talk about fracking because I guess you talked about that last night. It's not a cuss word. It sounds like it, but it's not. But we face fracking and fracking insurance when you look at what happens in the oil industry and injection of salt water into oil wells. We get involved in a lot of the issues like that, and including climate change. It's an interesting job that I have. I truly love getting up and going to work because I do make a difference. But the last thing I'm going to tell you is this. You cannot have a viable economy in the state of Mississippi if you do not have a viable insurance industry. Thank you for letting me be here. God bless you, and God bless the great state of Mississippi.
When I walked in, I've never seen it look so good. This flag behind me, is that not just awesome? And the banners, and you know, I've told everybody, go to the restrooms because we put brand new restrooms in here and they're pretty awesome too. But I am honored to be with you, and I want to talk to you about some of the things that we have been doing. I have been honored to be your Commissioner of Agriculture and Commerce for the last 4 years. Prior to that, of course, I spent 12 years in the state Senate, 8 of those being chairman of the Agriculture Committee down there, which some of my best days. I really miss the Senate, but I certainly like what I'm doing now. I just want to cover a few things for you. You know, as most of you know, we are a regulatory agency. We have a lot of regulatory responsibilities. And as a senator, I had a notebook from lessons learned from Katrina. Part of our job is to make sure we inspect the petroleum and the gas stations and the grocery stores and these throughout the state, including these small areas. When I got elected and had been through Katrina and realized there was no GPS locations for these gas stores, for these grocery stores that were so important after disaster, we established 5,700 GPS locations to pinpoint where all of them were, because after a storm, when there's no road signs, we need to get out there and make sure the Department of Agriculture is doing their job by getting these stores back open, by getting the gas pumps running again. We've implemented an e-commerce system so businesses can purchase their permits and licenses online 24/7. I go to these out-of-state meetings and they said, thank you so much for making that so much easier for all of the companies that have to register through the Bureau of Plant Industry, seed, feed, fertilizers, all those companies, to make it so much easier. You know, we pretty much live by these things now. We have mobile apps that will connect the public with agencies offering services, the apps that you can download on your phone. This very building right now, which looks so good today, is also where we're getting ready to host the Dixie National Rodeo, the biggest rodeo east of the Mississippi. The sponsors of the National Rodeo we're being viewed live stream now. We've gone live. Wrangler Network, which doubled our viewership for the rodeo. We had about 6,500 in-house that night. We had almost that many watching online. Some of the things in the progression that we've done through the technology that's at our expense. 38% increase in certified farmers markets since I've been your commissioner. We've increased markets and revenues through farm-to-school programs. We have more farmers growing directly for our school children than we ever have. We've partnered with the Mississippi Farm Bureau with the Federation to showcase the farm families of Mississippi. I don't know how many of you have seen those commercials, but that's my favorite thing, is to tout the great farmers we have in Mississippi. Money well spent to get our message out. We have a 59% increase in farmer participation in Mississippi Farmers Market since 2012. That's 59% increase. We're out there making jobs, expanding the markets for our farmers. Most of you are familiar with the UAVs, the drones. If you've seen my commercial, you will see a drone flying in there. 80% of the use of drones is being predicted in agriculture. We've got a program out at Hines Community College that is teaching these students how to operate these UAVs. Great jobs coming just right there. Talked to a young guy that had actually been in Afghanistan operating a drone, was making over 6 digits. Great promises there. You know, I've always said that I'm scared of 2 things, and that's snake and my mama. There's one other thing that is on my list right now that I want to talk to you about, that you'll be reading a lot about. That is the avian influenza, the bird flu. It's affected 21 states so far. The hardest hit has been Minnesota and Iowa. There have been 48 million birds euthanized at a cost of over $300 million. As the ducks fly south on the Mississippi Flyway, that increases our chance of an outbreak of avian influenza, the possible outbreak. The heat kills that virus. The cooler weather spreads that virus. If the ducks land and bring that outbreak to us, it could literally be a catastrophe for poultry in Mississippi. Humans are not affected, let me get that straight. But if we were to have a positive case of outbreak of avian influenza, I just want to assure you that the Department of Agriculture, the Animal Board of Health, the federal and state agencies, we are doing everything we can to be prepared for that. You know, we're not a turkey state. We don't grow turkeys here, but the states that do have been heavily impacted by this. So I suggest if you don't have your Thanksgiving turkey, you go ahead and get it. The second thing that concerns me is the growing population that we have and the challenges we have of feeding this world. You know, in 1950, we had about 2.5 billion people. A lot of them were farmers. Most people had gardens. In 2005, we had 6.5 billion. Today, we have 7 billion people in this world. If the projections are correct, by 2050, we could be looking at feeding 10 billion people. That's a challenge, folks. That's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of science. It's going to take a lot of technology to meet that goal. I want you to hear this. If we stopped all ag productions right now, shut down all ag operations, we would have enough food to feed this country for 30 days if we shut it down right now. So this is a vital goal that we have, that we can reach, but it is one of the concerns that I have. One of the other concerns I have is the production agriculture. There's groups out there that think they have a better idea of how to farm than those of us who actually do it. They don't want you to dehorn their cattle. They don't want you to vaccinate in many circumstances. They don't want any animal slaughtered. I assure you, you've got a Commissioner of Agriculture right now that will stand in that gap of protecting agriculture. You've got a Commissioner of Commerce right now that will do everything she can, legislatively, whatever it takes, to make sure we continue to provide the atmosphere that these farmers can cultivate and have that safe, affordable food on your table. Can you imagine going to a 4-day school week because of the lack of food or the food supply? You know, a country that cannot feed itself is certainly not a secure country at all. I have been honored and privileged to serve as your commissioner. I think that we have made great strides in many aspects. The fairgrounds that we're on right now, I think that we had a fantastic state fair this year. Our attendance was down some. We had some issues that I think we dealt with in a positive way. But I am honored to be that person to stand in the gap, along with my partners, Farm Bureau, the Cattlemen's Association, the Mississippi Poultry Association. You know, today we're about to eat some great fried catfish. I think Simmons Catfish has provided. In 2008, I had the opportunity to carry the water on the country of origin labeling bill for catfish that says if you're going to serve catfish in Mississippi, you're going to tell us where it came from. So you go in these restaurants now and it's got that placard that says, "We proudly serve U.S. farm-raised catfish." That's part of the security that I'm talking about. So I want you to enjoy your day. I want you to enjoy your meal. And as always, before you sit down, 3 times a day, as most of us do, first thank God, then thank a farmer. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Mike. Well, guys, I want to tell you, we're running just a few minutes ahead of schedule, which is good because I wanted to find some time in our program today to tell you about a few things that are going on across the state, because I think sometimes we as Mississippians, I know being born here, growing up here, we tend to not realize what we have in front of us and what our state, all the great things that happen out there. You know, Mississippi is a proud state when it comes to our history and our culture. And really, I want to thank some tireless volunteers that over the last few years are in the process of finding new ways to tell our story. In fact, there are 3 major projects underway in the state of Mississippi right now that I'm sure most of you know about, but I want to make sure that I kind of highlight what's happening with them. One of them is just right up the street here to our west, and you probably saw the construction taking place on the Museum of Mississippi History and the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum. The 2,000 square foot building will be shared by both museums, and they'll have common space and common classrooms, and it's scheduled to open in 2017 as the centerpiece of our state's bicentennial celebration. In addition to displaying artifacts, the museum will showcase the historic stories of Mississippians. The Museum of Mississippi History replaces the old one that was in the old Capitol that was damaged during Hurricane Katrina. And the Civil Rights Museum will be the nation's first state-operated civil rights museum. Past MEC chairs Reuben Anderson and Haley Verzachary played a pivotal role in raising funds to make this great museum happen. Also, early next year, the Grammy Museum Mississippi opens in Cleveland, and it will mark the first Grammy Museum to be built outside of Los Angeles. It will explore music history right here in the cradle of American music in Mississippi. The 27-square-foot Grammy Museum will be housed on the campus of Delta State University, home to the Delta Music Institute, the state's sole accredited music industry study program. The Grammy Museum will be dedicated to exploring really the past, the present, and the future of music right here and shedding light on the deep musical roots that are here in Mississippi. And earlier this month, the official groundbreaking took place for the Mississippi Arts and Entertainment Experience. It will be Mississippi's first museum that's dedicated to exploring all artists in all disciplines, including dance, drama, literature, music, and the visual arts. Set to open in 2017, the museum will be an iconic structure right there in downtown Meridian. The 22,000 square foot facility will have a Hall of Fame and interactive exhibit area to educate people on what's happened in Mississippi in the arts. But more importantly, it will also be a gateway to other parts of the state and what's there. That's one of the things that this museum is going to do. And I want to thank past Chair Tommy Delaney, who serves as president of the board of the Mississippi Arts and Entertainment Experience. Many of today's sponsors, and you see our sponsors around, many of today's sponsors have made the commitment to make these facilities happen, to really help grow ways to tell Mississippi's wonderful story. So look for more information about this in the coming months. We'll have that on our website at mec.ms. But more importantly, I encourage you to really explore our great state. Take a minute to get out, find those hidden treasures that exist all across the state.
The government's role is to create an environment which encourages those in the private sector to invest capital and create jobs, and the successes we've had with that.
Give us your assessment of the test scores that have been released from Mississippi Public Schools.
Well, I'm very proud of the students and the teachers all across our state. Mississippi was ranked as the only state in the country that saw significant progress in both fourth grade reading and fourth grade math. I think that says an awful lot about the progress that's being made in Mississippi, and I think it's something we ought to celebrate.
Your feeling regarding the results of the third grade gate?
Well, we've made significant progress. We've put a focus on reading. The reason we've done that is because from kindergarten through third grade, students are learning to read. Beyond the third grade, they're reading to learn. And so that's something that's extremely important, and we're really excited about the progress that's being made.
Looking down the road, what do you see as the priorities for Mississippi over the next several years?
Well, we're going to continue to invest in education. If we're going to see long-term economic prosperity, we must improve the educational attainment level of our citizens, and that's something we're going to continue to do.
I think it's that Mississippi's businesses are profitable. We're the only Secretary of State in the country to go paperless. We've got Y'all Business now, where you can go on and get all the demographics, population data, consumer data for every small business in Mississippi for free. Same stuff Walmart has. So we're competitive, and I guess our message is we don't need to apologize for Mississippi business. We can compete with anybody.
What do you see as priorities over the next several years?
Well, we're starting, and the most important is, of course, jobs and creation, and then also education. Those two really go hand in hand. You'll see some discussions about those. This year we're going to propose a rewrite of the entire election code, which hadn't been done since 1890. So yeah, there's a lot of things going positive in Mississippi.
Well, the message was economic growth. If you look at the creation of over 40,000 jobs, unemployment now has dropped 3 percentage points down to 6.1, about a $3 billion private investment in the last 4 years. We are on the right track for economic growth in Mississippi like never before. And education, again, Mississippi, with the U.S. report card, the report card of the states that comes out once a year, we are the only state in the nation that show growth in fourth grade reading and math. The only state in the nation to do so. That is time for celebration. We think that's because of the third grade gate, the literacy program, the emphasis that we've had on reading coaches, and the great work of teachers and parents across the state.
What is the link with the improvement in education with economic development?
Well, you can't have economic development without an educated workforce. So as we see improvement in the fourth grade reading, that means these students are going to do a better job in math and science in 7th and 8th grade. They got a much higher chance of graduating from high school. So now you've got people who are on their career and college readiness path. and we have the workforce of the future in advanced manufacturing ready to go within the next 7 or 8 years. These students within 8 years or so will be the workforce of the future.
As you look down the road, what do you see the priorities for Mississippi over the next several years?
I think you're going to see the same thing. Education is successful. Our community colleges have been rated #1 in the nation, so workforce development along with education, and then building that economy to afford the jobs so these students won't have to move out of state to live the American dream.
Your reaction to MEC here today?
Oh, a phenomenal job. If you look at the amount of information that this crowd gets to glean, how they get to personally interact with the elected officials of the state of Mississippi, and this is the business community of the state of Mississippi. These are the men and women that are creating jobs. These are men and women whose companies are paying taxes so that we can support public education. Last year we spent more public funds on K through 12 than any time in Mississippi history because the men and the women in that room paid more taxes than ever before.
Tell us, why is it important that businesses get involved in the political system?
Well, we have to have the businesses involved in it because one of the things that we do at MEC is we look out what are the things we need to be working on, particularly from a legislative standpoint of improving our state. One, making sure we have the type of regulatory environment that will foster economic growth. That includes everything from taxes to other things that businesses may be facing, licensure, things of that nature, and we're very involved in that process. But also, we understand for businesses to be competitive, there are other things that are important, such as education and workforce development, two areas that we spend a lot of time working on. MEC's in the middle of a major transportation study because we understand the importance of transportation to economic development. The key for the business leaders to get involved, be part of this organization, is that their involvement, their support is what allows us to go over and work on those things that will help grow the economy. It will mean that businesses that are here can grow and expand. It means we can attract new businesses here, which grows and expands all of the other businesses that are already here. I mean, it's kind of an effect that everybody benefits by being active in an organization like MEC that's making sure we have a strong business climate while at the same time making sure we're doing things such as improving education, providing workforce development opportunities to the citizens of Mississippi so everybody in the state has an opportunity to take advantage of that.
Who can become members of MEC, and what is the value of membership?
Well, any business that wants to, the value of membership is one, the connectedness. Just by events like today, we'll have about 1,800 to 2,000 people that are expected to be part of today's event, and that's people from all parts of Mississippi. It's a chance to visit and hobnob. That's why we named it what it is. Hobnob and talk and have a chance to catch up with people that you only see on occasion. MEC provides that opportunity.